Good evening. I'm Jonathan Brunt. I'm a senior research engineer from Sensay. At Sensay, we create AI powered digital replicas of humans to preserve and share individual and organizational knowledge, turning it into scalable, sustainable wisdom. Today, we're going to briefly talk about Gemini 2.5 Pro, the most recent reasoning model that Google has released. First and foremost, it is a multimodal reasoning model, so it's able to handle image, audio, and video. The big thing that sticks out about it, and we've already seen this with Google Gemini, is that it has a 1 million token context window, and it's already being teased that 2 million tokens is coming mainstream soon. And the word is that Google has experimented with up to 10 million tokens in their context window. So a big question becomes, how have they done this? We've seen context windows that have gone up to 200,000 in the past, things like 128,000, 64, 32 were considered large context windows. Of course, as hardware and architecture improves, we're able to see larger context windows. But I think there's some real specifics, even though Google hasn't released a white paper on this architecture. Some of the things that they've said, some of the things that we know they've been working on, and some guessing lets us get some insight into what's going on. Probably first and foremost, the fact that they use a mixture of experts architecture, wherein you have a very large number of parameters for the model, but based on the prompt, only a very small fraction of those parameters, perhaps 5%, 10%, depending on the exact architecture, are activated. Could be even less than the 5%. Really depends on exactly how they've got it separated out. But what allows us to do is have a very large model, but in activating only a certain subset of those parameters, just like we've seen before with mixture of expert models, with Mistral's 56 billion mixture of experts, with DeepSeek's V3 R1, their mixture of experts, and other mixture of expert models. We're able to have a large model that uses less compute, that has faster latency and more tokens per second. There's also probably a lot of other things going on under the hood with their architecture. They said that multiple breakthroughs and multiple technologies were utilized to enable this million token context window. Some of these things include most likely the attention mechanism, where, if you would, tokens that are very far apart are still able to maintain context with what the other has reference to, what the other means, because of advanced attention mechanisms. There are also maybe sparse attention, low rank approximations, and a lot of other architectural and technological techniques that have been manipulated by Google for Google to be able to use this large context window. Another big thing to not be forgotten is their TPUs, their tensor processing units. This is their answer to large GPUs, their internal use, but these have certainly played a part in enabling the vast computations that you need for such a large context window. Because when you've got that large of a context window, you're putting a large amount of tokens in. That leads to many more calculations, both in training, in inference. So you have to have something, a piece of hardware that can handle that, and most likely, as we've talked about, the architecture that reduces the amount of those computations through things like the mixture of experts, the attention mechanisms, and so forth. And last but not least, and again, a lot of this is speculation, but they've almost certainly leveraged their training as well to idealize their training to be able to handle such a large context window. But without them publishing what they did with this, it's hard to really know. They put out, I'm not even going to scroll down through it, but they've got 12 different benchmarks that they're showing for Gemini 2.5 Pro. They compare it to OpenAI's O3 Mini, OpenAI's GPT 4.5, Claude's 3.7 Sonic, Grok 3 Beta, and DeepSeek R1. Again, a lot of times these benchmarks are cherry picked. When you supply a lot more benchmarks, it reduces the suspicion of that, but hard to put a lot of weight into the benchmarks. What you can put a lot of weight into is actually testing the model out. So I went in, I took some very, very large documents, including one document that I estimate was probably close to 750, 800,000 tokens. I put it into the model. I've got access to the model. I then asked some very nuanced questions about details in that document that were not clear. I also posed a lot of very classic, difficult questions that require intense chain of thought to solve the problem. And I just experimented with it. And I would say overall, my takeaway is that it's very good at this large context window. You don't see a reduction in performance in terms of having so many more tokens that it has to deal with. The agentic flow is really great with chain of thought, and its ability to solve very complex problems with quick tests appears really good. It's also very good at following very nuanced instructions. So if you're very careful, very detailed in your prompt, it's very good about maintaining exactly, understanding and maintaining what you're asking for. So overall, I think it's a great model. As I always do, I'd encourage you to experiment with it, but we see a very large context window, a context window that's going to double in size to 2 million tokens. So right now that's about 750,000 words. It'll go up to 1.5 million words to change tokens over to words. It's been able to do that through its architecture, its training, probably the TPUs that are used in-house. And it's got really good performance, both in terms of being able to adequately use that context window, its ability to follow nuanced instructions, its performance on a large set of tasks. I will admit that I mostly use OpenAI, Claude's 3.5, now 3.7 Sonnet. I'm also a big fan of open source. I've been using a lot of the DeepSeek models. Even going back in the day, I used Mistral models. Today, I like to use a lot of Quinn models. I haven't used Google over my career as deeply as some people use it, not to write it off. I think it was just more by circumstance of what I came up with, what the projects that I've stepped into and that I've worked on have been using. But I wanted to give this a try. A colleague asked me if I'd review this model. I'd already been looking through it, so it made for a pretty quick video to be able to put together and talk about. Again, I encourage you to go in, check it out. Thanks for joining me today. Please like and subscribe for the latest AI updates. I'm John Brunt from Sensay. Create your personal replica today at Sensay.io. Until the next time.